violations in Georgia is paying off. Trump has used it to raise over $7 million, and that success is drawing charges of grifting from his enemies, including Chris Christie. On Capitol Hill, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy continues to take baby steps toward impeaching President Joe Biden for his family's corruption. On Fox yesterday, he called it a natural step forward. We have the latest details on the racially motivated shooting of blacks at a Jacksonville, Florida Dollar General store, including the boos that greeted Governor Ron DeSantis at a vigil for the victims. And gymnast great Simone Biles is back with a vengeance. She wowed another crowd over the weekend when she won a record 8th World Championship with her crazy flips and jumps. Come on, Paris Olympics! For stories like these and more updates all day long from your favorite news outlets, go to offthepress.com.
Well, folks, good evening. Welcome to Stinchfield. For the past 3 weeks, we have been told climate change was responsible for the Maui fires. It now turns out that Maui County is filing suit against the Hawaii Electric Company for mismanagement, they say, for not preventing these fires by turning off the electricity grid. Now, Maui Electric says, no, we turned it off. This is not to blame. All of this tells me one thing as they fight this out, that in reality, the county of Maui doesn't believe climate change was the cause for all of this. Mismanagement was. And I can also tell you that the death and destruction was caused by mismanagement and gross negligence when it came to the response. You should have had trees trimmed long before these fires ever broke out, so there weren't tree limbs falling down on the power lines. You should have grass cut a lot shorter. And there should have been escape routes and sirens that have sounded, all the things that could have prevented people from dying. Never happened. So they're not talking about the homeless population that is in 2 of the areas where the fires were started, that they cannot definitively relate to the power lines down, compared to 1 area where there's video of a power line being down. But the other 2, what about homelessness? What about arson? See, the problem is the investigation wasn't even figured, yet they filed suit. Now, the liberals through all of this hear all these arguments going on about homeless, about arson, about power lines, but to them it doesn't matter. It is all about climate change. That from including the governor of Hawaii.
When you're talking about global warming, are you saying that climate change amplified the cost of human error?
Yes, it did. There's always going to be incredible things that people do to save lives, from the firefighters, from citizens, and there's always going to be decisions that are made that I'm sure aren't perfect in the moment.
No, all of the decisions leading up to this were the wrong decisions. It's almost as if you couldn't have made a conscious decision to make all the bad decisions, which leads me to believe some of this most certainly could have been purposeful. Humans are not to blame when it comes to climate change. There's no science that proves that to me whatsoever. Humans are responsible for the response to this fire, and that caused many, many people to die. So you talk about climate change. They are absolute zealots when it comes to pushing this nonsense. Robots to push an unproven mantra that humans are causing the earth to get warmer. Watch this.
Without facts,
please,
or economics on their side, they flatly deny what is happening.
Watch it. This one, 17, please. The montage.
Obviously, climate change is a factor, but in what ways is climate change a factor?
Climate change in many parts of the world is increasing vegetation dryness in large part because temperatures are hotter.
And there is clearly a climate component to what's happened here, a climate change component.
So we face a climate crisis of bandwagon buffoons. That's the climate crisis of literally people pushing this false mantra. The climate hoax, and I call it a hoax because nothing proves that it's man-made. I'm not a super believer or a super naysayer. I need to look at science, and science just has not proven to me that anything here is man-made. The reality is this climate change agenda, the climate change hysteria, is about waging war on fossil fuels. It's about billionaires and their new Green Deal that they want to make more billions out of. And of course, it's about shaming you into submission. This is John Kerry, Cut 7.
Without facts or economics on their side, they flatly deny what is happening to our planet and what we must do to save it. They incite a movement against what they falsely label climate change fanaticism, as they conveniently forget that the dictionary definition of a cult is the dismissal of facts in devotion to a lie.
Folks, you know what's hilarious is he literally just described the climate change fanatics. They are the ones who are cult-like. They are the ones that are not basing any of their decisions off of science. They are the ones with, quote, dismissal of facts, with devotion to a lie. Not us. Look at this. University professor in Yale. He was labeled a skeptic of climate change. They wanted him fired. You had most of the data has been compromised when you look at the climate change stuff, even manipulated at times by many of these universities, by climate alarmists who are after big money. That's what they do. They manipulate the data in their favor. Climate change hysteria, the anti-capitalist movement is what this is all about. And it is what? To embrace climate change, to scare you. You're going to get fat because of climate change. Maybe you're going to die because of climate change. Cut 8.
And while they refuse to accept the facts behind increasingly obvious damages, which the First Minister listed, they lash out at the truth tellers instead and label indisputable evidence as hysteria. They compound the already difficult challenge of the climate crisis by promising to do more of exactly what created this crisis in the first place. So now, humanity is inexorably threatened by humanity itself.
So here we are now. Humanity is threatened by climate change. We're all going to die if we don't get on board and follow their rules. What sounds like the cult to you? In fact, when I was in college studying cult-like behavior, this was it. If you're not on our team, you're against us, and you're going to die if you don't believe the same things that we believe. Salvation, that's what a cult's about. This is what they're pushing on you. If you're not with them, you're all going to die. Do you know the National Oceanic Administration, NOAA, in 2017, manipulated data? This is a proven fact now. Flawed data they used, they call it flawed data, versus verifiable data. They didn't use the verifiable stuff. So the world used this bogus study with this bogus data from NOAA to issue a report in the Science Journal that literally every single climate zealot uses, and it's been completely debunked about the rapid rate that temperatures were going up. Turns out all the data was flawed. A whistleblower comes forward. It proves that it's flawed, and lo and behold, NOAA somehow didn't save the data, so we couldn't check it. They didn't, quote, archive the data. Sounds familiar to me, like Democrats who just destroy emails. When it comes to climate change, they destroy the data. And they claim that we are a cult? Cut 19.
So alarmist researchers control the discussion. They publish lots of scary papers, and alarmist media jump on those. Time magazine says climate is everything. Good Morning America agrees.
Climate change is impacting everything from conception to pregnancy.
Transportation congestion, the size of frogs. everything.
Airplane turbulence.
Expect turbulence like this to become more frequent due to climate change.
Childhood obesity.
Climate change is making our children more obese.
Experts say that we have until 2030 to avoid catastrophe.
Activists hear the media and freak out.
Children are starving.
The potential extinction of the human race.
There you have it. John Stossel was awesome, by the way. It's a guy who uses facts to get to the bottom of very serious stories. And he uses other people's words to prove the points. What I try to do here on a regular basis. Again, we're all going to die if we don't get on board the climate change zealotry. Every global warming model that I could find has a trend rate of temperatures going up much faster and quicker than the trend rate of the actual temperatures. So if you look at a chart of the actual temperatures versus all the models go up much faster. Why? Because that's where the money is. They'll pay you lots of money to say that global warming is here. And it's all phony for one very big reason. Roll the NBC clip.
Record heat and pounding rain down south, mudslides out west, wildfires coast to coast. President Biden, in the face of these disasters, now facing new pressure to declare climate change a national emergency. It's something Democrats have been hoping for a while. Declaring an emergency can unlock special powers for a president in a crisis without needing approval from Congress, thanks to a law passed nearly 50 years ago.
So there you have it. They need emergency powers. Does that sound familiar to you? What do they do during COVID? They're trying to do now again, too, emergency powers. Now climate change. See, we're on to the COVID nonsense. So now climate change, you need a national emergency. And here comes all the unfettered power by big government and, of course, the Biden administration. Joining me now, Climate Depot publisher and former senior staff at the U.S. Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, Mark Morano, is with us. Mark, it's great to have you back on the show.
Thank you, Grant. Happy to be here.
Climate emergency. Why do they want to declare a climate emergency?
Well, first, let me say you did an excellent summary of this situation. This has nothing to do with the science, has nothing to do with the climate or saving the earth. This is a raw power grab, and it has been since day one. The United Nations, who started their climate panel, said from the beginning that this was not about the environment or climate. This was about redistributing wealth. This has been their plan. And now when COVID came along and they did the lockdowns in March of 2020 and we did the COVID emergency decree, the climate activists were at first jealous, and then they wanted in. And now they want to copy the exact same template as we saw with COVID, where the most consequential decisions of our life, Grant, were decided by unelected bureaucrats and raw executive dictatorial power. And that included decisions like church closures, school closures, business closures, stay-at-home orders, vaccine and mask mandates, and on and on. This was their model of how they wanted to govern. They loved it. For the first time, the One Tree West modeled it after one party ruled China. We were them. We became China under COVID emergency decree. So they love it so much, they're now urging Joe Biden to do the exact same redo, this time with a climate emergency. And we already know the Center for Biological Diversity, who supports this, has said this will give Joe Biden 130 new executive powers. That is what we're dealing with. That is at the core of what the climate change movement is, and is also at the core of what the whole public health bureaucracy was all about, exerting raw power.
I believe the climate change agenda is all about being anti-capitalism. They want to stick it to big business as much as they can. And then, of course, being anti-fossil fuels. What are some of the examples that you think Joe Biden would issue as an executive order that would limit our freedoms or cost us money?
Well, keep in mind, remember in COVID, that was a federal emergency power, but the state governors and mayors were also able to use it. We already have cities declaring climate emergency, so they'll be able to do the same thing. There's already a blueprints for this. And as a whole chapter in my book, The Great Reset, on all their blueprints, everything from thermostat controls to odd even car days to limits on gas stations to being able to, as John Kerry wants to do, go after American agriculture without democracy. The key here is they want to do all this through decree, the same way they're trying to ban pizza ovens or ban ceiling fans or gas stoves or car bans, all by bypassing democracy. So what Joe Biden's already done, and this was announced about 3 weeks ago, this is important, Health and Human Services is combining climate and public health. So they want to now name heat waves. So they're going to keep a death toll of heat waves. We're going to be talking about a climate death toll, similar to what we saw during COVID. We already have doctors in Canada prescribing patients as suffering from climate change. First, medical diagnosis. We have doctors who want to add it as a cause of death on death certificates. When the Biden administration has all of that, they can then merge climate with public health, and they can do pretty much anything they want at that point. But they're going to go after, you can restrict airline travel, you can restrict car travel, you can restrict meat eating, you can restrict energy use, and all without any input from Congress, because it's an emergency and we can bypass democracy. That's what COVID taught them.
All right. So all of this by design, I believe that we're seeing this play out. If the COVID restrictions don't work, let's go with a climate emergency restriction. I'm not a climate change zealot on either side of the aisle, Mark. I don't know. Maybe we get a little warmer. Maybe we get a little colder. I tend to think it's cyclical. The only thing that I do know is that I can't see that it's man-made. I know in my time in news, we used to cover like the coal-fired plants, particulate matter, the cement kilns. We have limited particulate matter tremendously from just 20 years ago. Carbon emissions have been brought down tremendously from years ago. Can they prove in any way, shape, or form that this exists from man?
No, you just look at the basic data. Yeah, can humans influence the climate? Yes. In the 1970s, they thought we were influencing it by cooling the atmosphere, by putting up essentially aerosols in the atmosphere and blocking the sun. Now they believe our CO2 is driving a climate crisis. But if you look at all the data, and you can even look at hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, wildfires, droughts, they're either a no trend or declining trend on 30, 50, 100-year timescales. This is actually deep inside the United Nations report. They admit that. So there's no way to prove it. Hundreds of factors influence our climate. They're trying to single out carbon dioxide as the control knob. It doesn't fly scientifically. We're not seeing it in the evidence. They'll talk about the temperature now. The heat waves we had right now, that even Joe Biden's EPA shows the heat wave index about 10 times hotter than it was now in the 1930s, before 80% of our CO2 went into the atmosphere in the United States. So this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to cherry pick every weather event, weaponize it, and use that to justify this climate emergency declaration, which will give America a sort of a COVID 2.0 in terms of raw power bypassing democracy.
Mark Morano, I still appreciate the work you're doing at Climate Depot. This is the kind of thing that I wish more mainstream media outlets would cover, and we appreciate you.
Well, thank you very much, Grant. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Folks, listen, Lahaina is that little town that burned down in Maui. I mean, absolutely burned down. Do you know what Lahaina means? It means relentless sun. That town has been around for hundreds of years. Relentless sun, they knew it was really hot way back when they named this town. More proof that climate change is not real. It's been hot for a long time in certain places on Earth. Coming up after the break, the Ukrainian prosecutor Joe Biden had fired is speaking out now. And is Joe not going to like what he has to say? Well, folks, when it comes to Team Biden, the Biden crime family, the cover-up at all levels continues. Check out this headline in the Washington Post today. This is outrageous. The fired Ukrainian prosecutor is not a reliable narrator. They're talking about Viktor Shokin, by the way. Viktor Shokin was the one that Joe Biden got fired, holding up that billions of dollars. Remember that? Saying if you don't fire the prosecutor, we're holding back the billions of dollars. Now, that guy's a main player in all of this, yet they say that Viktor Shokin is not a reliable witness here. So why is that? I will tell you that he's reliable to the point that when you have a RICO case, like they did with the mob in New York, you think the gangsters they're interviewing are reliable sources? No, they're not reliable sources. Doesn't mean you don't interview them. Doesn't mean you don't talk to them. Doesn't mean you don't try to get them to flip. Viktor Shokin, I promise you, is probably corrupt as every other Ukrainian oligarch in that country. Doesn't mean you don't talk to them. So they refuse to separate fact from fiction. Cut 3.
I do not want to deal in unproven facts, but my firm personal conviction is that, yes, this was the case. They were being bribed. The fact that Joe Biden gave away $1 billion in U.S. money in exchange for my dismissal, my firing, isn't that alone a case of corruption?
That a case of corruption? You would sure think it is. That's Viktor Shokin, of course, talking to Fox News. Now, he is the main player. You'd want to talk to him. Why is the Washington Post angry, saying, oh, he's not reliable? Well, take a guess why. Roll it. Put this up on the screen, please. So basically it says he's not prosecuted any member of the previous administration that was rife with corruption. So they're not happy he's not prosecuting previous administrations. Does that sound familiar to you? That's what they're doing right now here. So this makes sense. The Washington Post ignores the facts. The biggest fact being that out of all of this, there is this on-camera admission from Joe Biden. The threat that I just talked about caught on tape.
I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a got fired.
It is clear why he made that threat. He made that threat because his son is on the board. Devin Archer's on the board. All his friends are on the board. They're all making millions of dollars, $80,000 a month. Viktor Shokin's looking into the corruption at Burisma. That alone tells you the whole story. Add in the stuff going on in China. Add in the Moscow mayor's wife and the $3.5 million payments. Add in the other countries that we can now tie with all those suspicious activity reports and the bank transfers. But if you want to throw all of that out, in business with the Chinese spy chief, throw it out, and you just have Joe Biden using American taxpayer dollars to put the screws to the Ukrainians to fire the prosecutor investigating his son's company. That's all you need. That is the definition of influence peddling. It is impeachable. They put him at stake and national security at stake. This is Viktor Shokin talking about all of that.
That had I continued to oversee the Burisma investigation, we would have found the facts about the corrupt activities that they were engaging in that included both Hunter Biden and Devin Archer and others.
I guarantee you they would have. Now, there's no doubt in my mind that Viktor Shokin probably was up to monkey business on other fronts too. But it still doesn't mean Congress shouldn't be calling him in and interviewing him. Why have they not subpoenaed Viktor Shokin? Not that you have to abide by an American subpoena living overseas, but he may just want to come in and testify. Now, America's mayor, Rudy Giuliani, was on with my friend Steve Bannon this morning on War Room, one of my all-time favorite TV programs. This is how he summed it all up.
In February of 2016, Shokin raided Burisma, closed him down, and put him out of business. So Olszewski, the president of Burisma, went crazy There are four conversations that the White House will not release between the president of Ukraine and the vice president in that 2-week period following the shutdown. And at the end of that 2-week period, Shokin is fired. And Shokin will tell you the whole story. I mean, he was fired because he wouldn't back off Burisma. He offered to resign. He would have kept his mouth shut until Biden started accusing him of corruption, which wasn't true.
Who do you believe? You believe the Washington Post? You believe Rudy Giuliani? I believe Rudy Giuliani, hands down, 100%. So it is the biggest story of our time, and yet no one's paying attention to it. So now there's this story out, thanks again to our friends over at Fox News, that Devon Archer, this is Hunter Biden's friend, remember, who's kind of flipped on Hunter, had a meeting with then Secretary of State John Kerry just weeks before Shokin was fired. Now remember, John Kerry's son was also in business with Hunter. He ends up quitting when he sees the at least perception of monkey business going on. I believe John Kerry's son got the hell out of there. So now there's email services that proves that Devon Archer met with the Secretary of State just weeks before Biden met over there and getting him fired. The email reads that Devon Archer is coming to see S today at 3 p.m. S apparently is, of course, the Secretary of State. Well, Karine Jean-Pierre was asked about the Biden brand profit machine today during her news conference. Here was her answer.
This testimony, since the last time that I was in here, Devon Archer talks about how he and Hunter Biden tried to profit off the Biden brand. What is the Biden brand?
I'm not going to get into it from here. I'm not going to get into it from here. We're going to move on.
You're going to move on because you don't want to talk about it. You don't want to talk about it because you know the Biden brand is a profit machine. The Biden brand is the Biden bagmen, okay? Pick up the money on Air Force Two and bring it back to the United States. So all of this now brings me to impeachment. I am in the camp that says we've got to bring impeachment proceedings against Joe Biden right now. We can't wait. National security depends on it. This guy's a disaster. We're not talking about petty crimes. We're talking about serious, treasonous crimes against America. Politically, strategically, doesn't matter to me. The law is the law. This guy needs to go down right now. GOP Rep Mike Johnson agrees with me.
The idea that the president would be engaged in a pay-to-play scheme like this, I mean, bribery is something that's simply defined. And what everybody needs to remember here is that it is specifically listed, of course, as one of the 3 causes for impeachment in our Constitution. Article 2, Section 4 says that treason, bribery, high crimes and misdemeanors. And on Capitol Hill, a lot of people debate and quibble about what high crimes and misdemeanors are, but we know what bribery is. It's someone paying you to do their bidding, and that's what happened here, apparently.
It is clear. It's like the old Supreme Court ruling on pornography when there was asked for a definition of it. You know it when you see it. High crimes and misdemeanors when it comes to a president, you know it when you see it. This is it. So there is controversy among Republicans. What should we do? Even my buddy Kash Patel, you know, who's a regular on this program, that I respect his opinion. And I think maybe I got him to come over to my side when I offered up my solution. Even he says strategically, maybe you go after Merrick Garland first, you go after Secretary Mayorkas first, and all the players fall around him before you go to Joe. Roll Cash.
Everybody's calling for impeaching Joe Biden. I'm not. Don't impeach him. That's the political trap the left wants you to fall into. They want us to take him out for him. Impeach Garland and Wray.
And at some point, you've got to put the rule of law above everything else, above politics. He deserves to be impeached. Why don't we impeach all of them at the same time?
Listen, that would be a move. That's a masterclass move, as I would say. I just, you and I know a lot of folks on the Hill. I don't know that they have the bandwidth to conduct a 3-front impeachment process.
You know why I like my masterclass move of impeaching all 3 of them? It would shut Washington down. There would be no business coming out of Washington. Nothing. Could you imagine if we shut Washington down for 2 years and we just get to breathe for a moment? We get to come up for air without the oppression coming out of this administration and what amounts to the ruling class elite in Congress. Lastly, I will give you this. Kevin McCarthy says he's inching closer towards impeachment. Here's what he had to say this weekend.
If you look at all the information we've been able to gather so far, it is a natural step forward that you would have to go to an impeachment inquiry. And just so your viewers understand what that means, that provides Congress the apex of legal power to get all the information they need. Because remember what's laying out there right now. We have an attorney general that could have lied to the American public, which he has now named a special prosecutor. They have said two different things.
Did him and Kamala Harris have the same speaking class that says you got to act like you're talking to a kindergartner? Seriously. When you're a brawler, when you're a street fighter, you don't talk to a person like this. Maybe we need to do this. Maybe we need to do that. No. I'm going to take the impeachment proceedings and I'm going to shove it straight up in the place where the sun don't shine. That's what I want from Kevin McCarthy. It's not what we're getting from him. So it's about time Republicans do something. So let's make it happen sooner than later. You know who else, by the way, is on board with my idea of impeachment? President Trump. He says the time is now. Let's get her done. All right, a new report tells us just how many trans inmates have been convicted of sex crimes. And is the American Medical Association saying men can get pregnant? We'll talk about it. Welcome back, everyone. So the left has another ridiculous idea. They're doing this in states across the country. They're letting men who dress up as women claim to be women, and they're putting them in female populations in prisons across the country. So in Wisconsin, and the reason this is a dangerous idea, is the Heritage Foundation went and looked at transgenders, men who think they're women, and their rate of being convicted of sex crimes. 50% of the inmates in Wisconsin have been convicted of one or more sex crimes. This is the headline out of the Daily Signal. So you got 50%, and they're going to offer up the possibility. See, they're not telling anybody if they're actually doing this or not. How's that for transparency? Not very good. So they're actually doing this. Of the 161 transgender inmates in Wisconsin, 81 apparently have committed some kind of sex crime, including a dude by the name of Mark Campbell. He now goes by Nicole. Mark Campbell raped his daughter over and over again, apparently, and he got 34 years for it. Nicole Rose Campbell is apparently his name. Here's the headline. Nicole Rose Campbell, it says, who raped his daughter, can receive a sex change surgery on taxpayers' dime. What are they going to do? Put that sex offender in with women too? We don't really know. Where is he now? Daily Signal couldn't find him, at least not in the records, and the Department of Correction isn't telling them where he is. Joining me now, senior reporter for the Daily Signal, who wrote that. I said Daily Caller, it's Daily Signal. Mary Margaret Olahan is with us. Mary Margaret, it's great to have you on the program.
Great to be here.
So I want to go back to the end of your piece, because you tried to find this guy, I'll call him Mark Campbell, and it says no longer in custody or something like that, right? And they won't tell you where he is?
Yes, so his record, the track locator, is very nebulous about this guy's whereabouts. In fact, it's not even clear if it's him. It should be him. It's the right name, right initial, right last name, right birth date. But it's very nebulous about where he's housed, where he's been moved, what his background is. And when I asked for answers on this, of course, I got nothing. And in fact, I went back and forth with the guy who does comms for the Wisconsin Department of Corrections many times over the course of several days. And I said, we're publishing this story. We need to know this information. If you don't tell us, we're going to say that you wouldn't tell us. That's just kind of how that goes. Right. And he wouldn't tell me. And he said, I'm going to need some time to gather this information. And I said, well, I think it's pretty clear. Like, I am telling you, we know through this Heritage Foundation FOIA request, we know that there are 161 trans-identifying inmates, men who think they're women. We also know that 81 of them, I believe it was, over 50%, have been convicted of some kind of sex crime. So we know all that. We're not asking for personal information. What we want to know is how many of those guys are in women's prisons. And of course, you got to act like this is nebulous. Like, we don't know how to find that information. Well, they have that information. They know that information, but they also know that it's a big story, and they don't want to give me that story. They don't want that story out there, and they don't want anyone knowing where Mark Campbell is.
Mary Margaret, I'm going to tell you right now, I've been in and around prisons for a long time. When I was working in regular TV news, I did a lot of prison stories. They know if there's 161 inmates who identify as trans, they know exactly who their names are. All they have to do is see where they're housed. Every single inmate has an inmate number that says where they're housed. That is 3 keystrokes for them, probably, to figure out who's in what facility. So would they give you any hint, because this is the big question, are these sex offenders, specifically the 81 of the 161, are they housed with women?
They wouldn't give us any hint on this. Of course, I'm going to keep asking. I think that we'll get answers very soon, because we've had a lot of interest in this story. I've seen it making the rounds. We're not the only ones that are interested in this. I think a lot of people care a lot about how many men are in women's prisons around the country. Women's Liberation Front, they go by Wolf. They've done some amazing work exposing what's going on here. There's been women that say that they were made pregnant in women's prisons because they're housed with biological men. There's a lot of concerns about this. The California Department of Corrections was putting condoms in all of the women's prisons. We have issues here that people are acknowledging, but then at the same time, there's no actual acknowledgement of what's going on.
Well, I know, Mary Margaret Olhan, you will follow this for us. Please keep us posted. I'll be watching the Daily Signal as well. I read that all the time, every morning. So I appreciate the work you're doing on this.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you for coming on. All right, folks, I told you about this idea that the AMA now thinks men can get pregnant. I'm going to tell you, even with this idea, it doesn't mean men are pregnant. There is now a process in place to give men who want to have babies a uterus transplant. This costs about $300,000 for a uterus transplant. And even quacks like this doctor, who are claiming that men can get pregnant, he's a doctor. We'll just listen to him. Cut 9.
Every patient who has a baby is not a woman. As an OBGYN, I care for many patients who are trans men or non-binary people who have babies. The point of inclusive language is not to misgender someone who is a woman or is a mother. It's to appropriately include.
That doctor is an idiot, because you wouldn't need a uterus transplant into a man if they were a woman, okay? So the AMA actually had a study that came out that was saying, hey, we should have taxpayers fund this. Now the AMA is backing off this, but they had this deal that said that it was just the paper that was saying this and not them, whatever. Taxpayers should not be paid for this. So here's how it goes, uterus transplant. You offer up your $300,000 at Baylor. This is the graphic, guys. They remove the penis, okay? They recreate a vagina. And I'm sorry, this is a family program, so I apologize, but you need to hear this stuff. They chop the testicles off. They remove the sperm and they freeze the sperm. So apparently you can use your own sperm to implant a baby with a donor egg in the uterus that you took from most likely someone who died, and they take their uterus. The womb is then surgically implanted into the man. They extend tissue around the womb, and then they need immune suppressors. The immune suppression they need because they're men. The immune suppression they need is because they're men. The body doesn't want to take the uterus. It's pushing it out of the body. It doesn't want it there because they're men. Okay? So this thing, $300,000, bad idea. It just goes to show you how far our country has gone to go off the deep end. Okay? Here we go, folks. You did the tough thing during COVID. You paid your people, pulled your business through the pandemic, and now doing the tough thing could qualify you for $26,000 per employee at covidtaxrelief.org. Government funds are available to reward companies with 2 or more employees who stayed open during COVID. This is not a loan, and you don't have to pay the loan back. This program is complicated, but nobody knows more about it than the CPAs and tax experts at covidtaxrelief.org. You pay nothing up front. They do all the work and share a percentage of cash they get you. Businesses of all types, including nonprofits and churches, can qualify, including those who took PPP loans, even if you had an increase in sales. You did the tough thing for your employees during COVID. Let covidtaxrelief.org help you get up to $26,000 per employee. Visit covidtaxrelief.org. That's covidtaxrelief.org. All right. Is President Trump getting more support from minorities? That is next. By now, folks, you have probably seen this video. It's got millions of views. President Trump riding through Atlanta, Georgia to go get booked into the Fulton County Jail, and people screaming, "Free Trump, free Trump." They love him. See, all those black folks love him. This is backfiring on the Democrats. So then over the weekend, I'm perusing my social media, and I see the most beautiful, glorious sound bites from black folks everywhere saying President Trump's their guy. Watch this, cut 3.
And I don't give a damn who this offends, but if that Trump get convicted of this crime and he can still run for president, I'm voting for his. I'm voting for that. I'm voting for him. If that convicted and he can still run for president just to see what he do, because that funny now, Trump is funny as hell, I'm voting for him. I'm telling you right now, okay? So just miss me with it. Make America great again.
That's what I say. Make America great again. And Trump is our retribution, right? He said it himself. Roll one more. Cut 4.
Trump is a brother now. I'm sorry. You go to jail in Zone 6 Atlanta, you a brother. Straight up. They up. Like that went to jail. They believe in that. This is good. We believe in that. Trust that.
Guess what? I do too. Trump's a brother now. You know, the amazing thing was he was a brother before he ran for president. All the rap stars used to talk about him. They loved him. Well, joining me now is maybe one of my favorite brothers of all, the former executive director of the National Diversity Coalition for Trump, Bruce Lavelle, is with us. Bruce, welcome to the program.
Hey, how's it going, man? I'm going to try to recoup from that last segment on cutting up. It was painful to watch. But I'll hang in there.
Yeah. Yeah, the uterus transplants. You and me, man, we're not signing up for that, and we're out on that deal. Hey, here's the reality, Bruce. I'm going to play some more of these. I want to go through some of these sound bites with you. I figured, you know what, as the white honky in the group, I can't do this as well as you, so I bring you in to help me with this. What do you make of those two guys?
Well, you know, it's nothing new. I actually am very familiar with Rice Street, Zone 6. I have many family members that worked in the city of Atlanta for many years. My cousin was the watch commander for Zone 6. I'm very aware of every turn and angle of that community. You know, Grant and Real America Voice, let me just keep this real with you guys. It has never been the community. It has never been the black community. It has always been the black leadership who tries to stifle or push away anyone like Trump or anyone remotely that has a difference of opinion that try to jump in there and block President Trump or many other Republicans. So what you saw is pretty much what they're. And to your point, Grant, you know, President Trump has always been a fixture in black culture and many cultures for decades. I mean, we can go down the list from the Bobby Brown videos to, you know, I would say Home Alone, but, you know, he's been a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, you know, many a times. But I think it's 22 rap songs he's included that we lost track. So it's nothing new, man. He's been friends with Snoop Dogg, 50 Cent, many people. So it doesn't surprise me. You know what? I wish he would have stopped. If he would have stopped on the side of the road, if I'd have been with him, I'd have said, "Hey, boss, pull over right here. We good, bro. We got this." Those folks would have came up, wanted selfies. It would have broke the internet.
Well, President Trump ought to change his campaign colors to my two favorite colors if he really wants to relate to these people. Green and gold. Green for the money and gold for the honey. And I'm telling you, that would be great. Let me run one more. This is what Tucker had to say about it. Not Tucker Carlson, but Antoine Tucker.
I want to say to the New World Order and to the Illuminati, thank you very much for being stupid, dumb. We appreciate the fact that you keep elevating my guy, Donnie, to Teflon Don. And as you've seen his caravan ride through the hood in Atlanta and you've seen all the love he got, when I tell you I speak for the hood, I tell you this sincerely. We don't like you anyway. We don't like the government. Y'all been over the black race for the longest. And we watch you with the only man that's ever offered black people anything.
You know, it's amazing, Bruce, because he actually says exactly what I say on this program every night, just a little bit differently. I don't use the term Illuminati. I talk about the ruling class of elites. And I don't like the government when they're oppressing me. These these people are spot on.
Yeah. Well, the Illuminati conversation is another conversation, just for FYI. But, a lot of folks do relate. And, you saw what happened in the First Step Act. And just, really like you saw Judge Joe Brown one time, if you can go check him out, his video, he's known him for years, too, where I know this for a fact. Many colleagues have done business loans with him historically for years. So it's nothing new. It's just so sad that the mainstream media did a fantastic job, if you want to use that, when he came down the escalators, and all of a sudden they start running with the race narrative. And those were the mainstream media and the elites, as that man was saying, and many others. But I'm telling you, the voter class, the class of what you saw down off Rice Street, down in Zone 6, I can take you in other parts of areas in Atlanta, and as well as Tampa here, Miami, many places, and they'll do the same thing. I'm just, keeping it real. And they know that. And that's why they've always tried to paint the narrative of, oh, he's a racist and this and that, because they knew how he had such a great connectivity, Grant, for all people, just for that matter.
Absolutely. Real quick, if you can, just 20, 30 seconds. Do you think part of this, for the black man today, sees that the history going back to pre-civil rights, and maybe even in some places today, the persecution that they've experienced from, quote, the man, the law, these things, they look at what President Trump's going through, this railroad job, that they relate to that? Real quick, if you can.
Yeah, being in the South, I'm 59. I can tell you stories of my dad from the 40s and 50s. Grant, we've gotten better, just for Real America Voice News. But I will say historically, especially here in the South, it hasn't been so favorable for black men and women, especially. My aunt went to jail for looking at a white guy in her eyes in 1952. I mean, I can go down the list with this, but so you see the sentimental value in terms of what they see and what historically black American, black culture said, oh, my God, if you can put a former president and arrest him and indict him, my God. So there's a lot of sympathy that understands what that struggle has been historically.
Well, it's always great having you on the program, Bruce DeVille.
I'm down here fighting a hurricane. I'm down here in St. Pete. We got a hurricane on the horizon. So
be safe with the hurricane. And you tell the boss if you see him, campaign colors, green for the money, gold for the honey.
Well, he's probably watching right now, so you tell him right now he's watching.
There you go. Mr. President, go for it. Bruce DeVille, everybody. Thank you so much. Bruce, it's great seeing you. All right, folks. Speaking of gold, right? Green for the money, gold for the honey. How about gold for gold? I'm talking about my friends over at Birch Gold. Just text America to the number 989898. Do yourself a favor. Start protecting your portfolio with the one commodity that has stood the test of time. Gold. Look, portfolio protection, they're trying to track every move, every way you spend your dollar. We got inflation through the roof, government uncertainty. Putting some money into gold can be a great idea. Talk to my friends at Birch Gold about it. Again, text America to the number 989898. All right, coming up next, some great police work going after climate protesters, just running their blockade over. And then it's guns coming out. We'll show you the whole video coming up next.
Here are some of the headlines we are featuring today from your favorite news outlets at offthepress.com. That infamous mugshot of former President Donald Trump being booked for alleged election violations in Georgia is paying off. Trump has used it to raise over $7 million. And that success is drawing charges of grifting from his enemies, including Chris Christie. On Capitol Hill, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy continues to take baby steps toward impeaching President Joe Biden for his family's corruption. On Fox yesterday, he called it a natural step forward. We have the latest details on the racially motivated shooting of blacks at a Jacksonville, Florida Dollar General store, including the boos that greeted Governor Ron DeSantis at a vigil for the victims. And gymnast great Simone Biles is back with a vengeance. She wowed another crowd over the weekend when she won a record 8th World Championship with her crazy flips and jumps. Come on, Paris Olympics. For stories like these and more updates all day long from your favorite news outlets, go to offthepress.com.
All right, folks, take a look at this. That is Nevada Rangers driving straight over climate protesters. Blockade of the road. One way in, one way out, blocking ambulances. Listen to this.
Get on the ground! Get on the ground! Don't move!
So I love them whining and crying. Now, I might have handled it a different way if I was the officer. Look, I don't mind this. I love seeing it. It makes me smile. But I might have driven up and say, hey, you got 2 minutes to move your stuff. If you don't move the stuff, I'm arresting everybody. Or you're in Nevada and you just run right over it. That's a good way to do it, too, I guess. I'm Grant Stinchfield. That's going to do it for us. Stinchfield's RB Rolls. See you back here tomorrow night.
Live from Studio 6B on a Monday. Getting a brand new week started. Glad you're in. Slick Rick sitting right there is going to do some sports. Rick Delgado's got the news. Of course, all our friends out there in the Getter chat and everywhere else that you watch the show, thank you for letting us be a part of your night, 8 to 10 weeknights right here, Real America's Voice. Glad you're in on a Monday. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to dig into. We take our time and dig into some of these things. There's lots to talk about. Slick Rick, how are you?
I'm doing great, Big D. How you doing?
Very good. Welcome back to the show. Hope you had a couple of good days off. Rick,
I missed you guys. I missed you.
We missed you too, as the audience did. I want to thank everybody who joined me this morning on did a little morning stream on our Getter page. Had a nice little audience there, and then of course all of a sudden everything went black, and it was everybody was gone. I don't know what happened, but
it just went black.
It just